they will take quick action, and we in the New Democratic Party, Mr. Speaker, are prepared to work with the government. And do I have more time?
Order. In fact, the time for government orders has expired. The honourable member for East York will have 3 minutes remaining in his speech when this matter returns before the House. Statements by members. The honourable member for Northumberland, Quinte West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand in the House today confident that our government is keeping Canadians safe. Terrorism remains a very real threat to Canadians and Canadian values. As a member of the Public Safety Committee currently reviewing the government's anti-terrorism legislation, I know firsthand the commitment our government is making to protect Canadians from violent jihad extremism. Right. Bill C-51 is an important piece of legislation that will provide the proper tools to law enforcement to apprehend and prosecute terrorists. As a retired police officer, I know how important it is that our law enforcement officers have the ability to go after these terrorists. When it comes to terrorism, it is of the most importance that those who are tasked to protect Canadians have the enforcement tools and ability to do so. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Here, here. The honourable member for Nickel Belt.
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to pay tribute to Nadia Bouillon from Chelmsford, who won a gold medal in solo women's ice dance at the Special Olympics in Prince George, BC. A member of the Walden Figure Skating Club, Nadia has been skating since she was 8, and she says she enjoys the hard work it takes to compete at this level. More importantly, Nadia tells us that she skates to have fun and do the best she can. She enjoys traveling to competitions and making new friends with other athletes. Nadia's success is rooted in community engagement and the determination it takes to overcome obstacles. I'm sure all members will join me in congratulating Nadia and her parents Paul and Lynn, along with her coach Maxine Connolly, and everyone who makes the Walden Figure Skating Club successful. Great job, Nadia.
The honourable member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is a trading nation, and our Conservative government's ambitious trade agenda is helping small businesses and the economy and prosper in Lambton, Kent, Middlesex, and across Canada. This past weekend, I had the opportunity to host the Minister of International Trade at 2 roundtables that focused on small businesses and the opportunity to host a global workshop to further promote local growth on an international level. For example, I'm pleased to say that Mayor Joanne Vanderheyden of Strathroy-Caradoc and her team have one of the first designated investment-ready certified sites, the largest so far in Ontario, that is recently ready to attract new businesses taking advantage of Canada's stable bank system and low taxes. Mr. Speaker, trade agreements such as CETA encourage prosperity and growth in agriculture, manufacturing, and all industries, and our government's unprecedented support for small business is recognized as the opportunity for them to reach their full potential. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Député de Lac Saint.
The honourable member for Lac Saint Louis.
Alison Tippin, a young resident of my riding, on a remarkable scholastic achievement. Alison recently took part in Quebec's Journée des Maths, an online competition that tests students from grade 3 to secondary 4 on their knowledge of mathematics. She placed first in her group for the 2nd year in a row. Competition was so fierce that it required a perfect score to secure top place in her grade 6 group. Math is just one of Alison's talents. She is an accomplished chess player who has participated in national junior tournaments and represented Canada internationally. Alison also enjoys karate, ballet, swimming, and gymnastics. I had the pleasure of hosting Alison, along with her mother Diana and father Vadim, on a recent visit to Parliament Hill. Alison, who already demonstrates a keen understanding of Parliament, was delighted to take in her very first question period from the galleries. Please join me in congratulating Alison and wishing her continued success in her many wonderful endeavours.
The honourable member for Oakville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Legalized marijuana in Colorado has not been just good, clean fun. Illegal drug dealers are still thriving as dope smokers avoid the 27.9% sales tax. In 2014, 45 children 8 years old or under ingested marijuana-laced sweets and ended up in poison control centers, some needing intubation or spinal taps in hospital. One young man consumed a marijuana cookie and jumped to his death. Another allegedly shot and killed his wife after eating marijuana candy. In Canada, most dead drivers in car accidents are aged 16 to 24, and 40% of Canadian youth have ridden with a driver who has smoked marijuana. So much for the Liberal leader's brave new world of legalized dope. Shamefully, the Pied Piper of pot announced his legalization plan to teenagers at a Charlottetown high school. While parents are looking for ways to keep their children and teens safe, the Liberal leader would make that harder. He should take advice from one of his old Pink Floyd albums. Hey, leave them kids alone.
Hear, hear. The honourable member for Esquimalt-Wanda-Fuga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are concerned about the end of door-to-door mail delivery. In my riding alone, Canada Post plans to shift 15,000 households to community mailboxes this year. Most residents find this hard to accept, especially after Canada Post's announcement that it made a profit of nearly $200 million again this year. In my riding, residents and their municipalities are still struggling to get answers from Canada Post. Who will cover the costs associated with installing these boxes like lighting and sidewalks? Who will evaluate pedestrian safety and traffic concerns? Or will Canada Post just wait for accidents to happen? Who will pick up the tab for litter? Who will clean up the graffiti? Who will compensate those whose property values crash when a box is plopped in front of their house? I continue to get phone calls, letters, and emails in my constituency office almost every day asking for help, but Canada Post refuses even to host an open house in my riding to answer questions like these. It's time for the Conservatives to order a halt in this ill-conceived and unnecessary attack on essential public service and good-paying jobs in our communities. It's time for this Conservative government and its cronies at Canada Post to go.
The honourable member for Don Valley West.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise in the House today to congratulate the Thorncliffe Neighbourhood Office in Don Valley West on their 30th anniversary. This organization has faithfully served the people in my riding and surrounding area, providing a wide range of community services. They give assistance to seniors, conduct valuable job training and job placement services, and facilitate a variety of programs for children and youth. Our government is proud to partner with this organization that assists thousands of newcomers each year in the settlement process. They also operate one of the largest English language instruction programs in all of Ontario. I offer my sincere congratulations to Bill Pashby, Chair of the Board, and Ahmed Hussein, Executive Director, and the entire TNO team. I wish them the very best as they continue to serve our community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Okanagan-Coquihalla.
Mr. Speaker, we often talk on the importance of building bridges with First Nation communities. And I'm happy to announce that in Okanagan-Coquihalla, this is happening, literally, as the Penticton Indian Band is building the new Satik crossing over a portion of the Okanagan River system. This new bridge is vital to open up lands for economic development that will in turn create jobs. It is developments like this bridge that have earned the Penticton Indian Band the award of Aboriginal Economic Development Corporation of the Year from the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business. And more recently, the band received a coveted Tommy Award for environmental construction for their Skaha Hills development. This is very exciting news for our region, and the Satvik crossing is just one of the many major projects underway or recently completed. But these projects do not happen by accident. I would like to ask the House in joining me in recognizing the leadership of Chief Jonathan Kruger and Council in making these important projects a reality. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Brossard-la-Prairie. Mr. Speaker, on May 29th, 2012, Montreal police officer Carl Etier, who lives in my riding of Brossard-la-Prairie, came to the rescue of a suicidal woman who was threatening to jump from a 22-story building. Officer Etier and his colleague, Officer Roberge, scaled a 4-foot-high parapet and crawled along a narrow ledge to get near the intoxicated woman. They had to come dangerously close to the edge in order to reach her and get her to safety. I invite my colleagues here in the House to join me in congratulating Officer Etier and his colleague, Officer Roberge, on this remarkable deed which earned them the Governor-General's Medal of Bravery. This decoration recognizes acts of courage in hazardous circumstances. Our heartiest congratulations and utmost gratitude go out to our men and women in uniform. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Dauphin, Swan River, Marquette.
Mr. Speaker, Canadian families know that Conservatives understand that parents know best. Yes. That's why we introduced a family tax cut and enhanced universal child care benefit that will provide support to 4 million Canadian families with children. In fact, this is one of the biggest packages of tax relief for Canadian families in modern history. And, Mr. Speaker, the vast majority of these benefits will go to low or middle income families. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, the high tax and high debt NDP and Liberals have not followed our lead in supporting Canadian families in choosing the type of child care that works for them. Instead, the NDP want to undo our support and oppose a one-size-fits-all bureaucratic scheme that fails to do anything for 90% of families. And the Liberals, well, they've just promised to take our money away. That's shameful, Mr. Speaker. The high tax and high debt NDP and Liberals need to stop listening to their elites and start listening to real Canadian parents. But until they do, our Conservative government will continue to support moms and dads in making the best decisions for their families.
The honourable member for Ottawa Centre.
Mr. Speaker, this weekend I joined almost 20 local community associations and environmental groups for a meeting of the Community Association Forum on Environmental Sustainability. Cafes brings together community organizations from across downtown Ottawa to discuss environmental issues, share best practices, and create solutions. It was great to see the creative thinking and collaboration coming from my fellow residents of Ottawa Centre. One of the key issues at Saturday's meeting was developing a plan to promote urban trees in Ottawa. Urban trees help to mitigate climate change, and they also make our cities better places to live. All levels of government should support this agenda. In particular, Canada should join other G7 countries in supporting urban forests at the federal level. From responsible development to public transit to shoreline cleanup, Ottawa's grassroots community organizations are showing great leadership in building greener, more sustainable Ottawa. I'm very proud to represent such an engaged and informed constituency. And Mr. Speaker, on this day, but I also wish my partner, my friend, my wife a very happy birthday.
The honourable member for Selkirk, Interlake.
Mr. Speaker, the terrorist cult ISIL has made clear that it is targeting Canadian civilians. Both the NDP and Liberal leaders had an opportunity to speak to the threat ISIL poses to Canadians, and they opted for partisan attacks over serious dialogue. It is beyond concerning that both of these leaders failed to acknowledge the real threat posed by ISIL and jihadi terrorism to Canada. In fact, the Liberals could barely find speakers on this important issue when it was debated last Thursday. ISIL has declared war on Canada and said no Canadians should feel safe at home. They have already inspired attacks in Canada as well as against our Western allies in Denmark, France, and Australia. And our Conservative government is facing this threat head-on. I encourage all members in this place to support today's motion to extend the mission against ISIL so that they can be degraded to the point where ISIL no longer poses a threat to Canada.
The honourable member for Etobicoke North.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to mourn the passing of my extraordinary friend, Max Kahn, who loved life, was a 3-time cancer survivor, the councillor for Ward 6 in Oakville, a champion for his constituents, and someone who knew the meaning of service. Max was always enthusiastic, interested in asking if he could help. Today we think of Max and his family and friends whom he loved dearly. We extend our condolences to his beloved father, mother, 3 sisters, brother, and a son. Max had been a resident of Oakville for the past 25 years and served as town councillor since 2006. He was thrilled to be nominated federal Liberal candidate for North Oakville, Burlington, and was planning to open his campaign office in just a few weeks with a much-anticipated launch. Oakville has lost a friend, a great man, and words cannot describe the loss to his family, friends, and community.
Member for Brant. The honourable member for Brant.
Mr. Speaker, today the Prime Minister is at the Honda plant in Alliston, Ontario, where he made an important announcement for Canada's automotive and advanced manufacturing sector. For the first time, Honda Canada will use one of its Canadian facilities to produce vehicles to export to Europe. Wow. This is big news for Ontario and for all Canadians, made possible by the historic Canada-EU trade agreement. Wow. When this government came to office, Canada had only 5 free trade agreements in place. Since 2006, we have committed to fixing the 13 dark years of trade under the Liberals, and now Canadian world-class products will have virtually unfettered market access to 43 countries around the world. Under the leadership of this Prime Minister, our government has created the right economic environment for Canadian businesses to succeed in global markets, creating jobs and long-term economic prosperity for all Canadians.
The Honourable Member for La Pointe de l'Île. Could somebody please remind the Finance Minister that his job goes all the way to October 19th? He still has work to do. For example, there's a budget to table. Canadians can't wait to see how the government's going to try to cover up the bad economic news that keeps piling up. The drop in the price of oil, the worsening job market, the loss of good jobs at the expense of unstable and part-time jobs, the many store closures, Max, Jacob, Target, and now Future Shop. The provinces are grappling with the same problems, but they seem to be able to table a budget in a timely fashion. So what's keeping the minister from tabling his budget? If he's run out of ideas, he should come talk to us. Every day the NDP comes up with solutions that will help Canadian families. And we will be putting those ideas to work in Budget 2016.
The Honourable Member for Red Deer.
Mr. Speaker, we know that the high tax, high debt, Liberals and NDP haven't met a tax they didn't like nor want to hike. And we know these high tax, high debt Liberals and NDP think government makes the best choices for families. On this side of the House, our Conservative government believes in keeping more money in the pockets of Canadian parents. Our low tax plan for families is working, and we're making sure 100% of families with kids benefit with almost $2,000 back in their pockets. If given the chance, the high tax, high debt Liberals will take these benefits away to pay for big government that tells you how to raise your kids. The contrast is simple. The Liberals believe bureaucracy knows best when it comes to Canadian families, while we as Conservatives believe in keeping money in the hands of the real experts on families. Their names are Mom and Dad.
Oral questions. Question orale. The Honourable Member for Hull-Elmer.
The church shop is going out of business. 131 stores closed and 1,500 people out of work. Many won't even qualify for benefits after years of Conservative and Liberal reductions to EI. And, Mr. Speaker, this is just the latest in a growing list of closures. So, with 1,500 more families facing job loss, how can the Conservatives explain their inaction on job creation and the economy?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, while the global economy remains fragile, our government is focused on creating jobs, growth, and economic prosperity. And since the depths of the recession, we've created 1.2 net million jobs in the Canadian economy, and we will continue our low-tax plan for jobs and growth. In contrast, the NDP have a plan to introduce a carbon tax, which is a job-killing plan, $20 billion out of the pockets of ordinary Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Hull-Aylmer. Mr. Speaker, 1,500 people out of work. I think that the Minister of Finance needs to look at these realities head on. These people deserve better than a government that can't even bring down a budget on time and that doesn't have a clear plan for job creation, contrary to the NDP. The list of layoffs in Canada is growing, Mr. Speaker. Max, Jacob, Target, and now Future Shop. What is the government waiting for to bring down a budget that will make job creation a priority? The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, as regards the budget, stay tuned. The NDP is calling for policies that will deliberately weaken Canadian industries. Our government, on the contrary, knows that Canada is the G7 country that has created the most jobs proportionately speaking. We have created 20% more jobs than our closest country to compare with. Now, if we were to listen to the NDP, we would see these all costs go up for Canadian taxpayers. The Honourable Member for Hull-Aylmer. Now, the Conservatives aren't just improvising on the budget. The Minister of National Defence had to be rescued by his CDS, General Tom Lawson, who had to rectify the comments made by the Minister on the weekend. Can the Minister confirm that he agrees with the CDS on the fact that Canada and the United States are not the only members of the coalition using precision-guided munitions in Syria? The Honourable Minister of National Defence. Mr. Speaker, I agree with the General, and the Honourable Member is mistaken because the U.S. and Canada are the only allied nations with munitions for dynamic targets. This is one of the reasons why the United States encouraged Canada to broaden our military mission against the Islamic ISIL, in fact. These are dynamic targets, and our weaponry is among the best in the world.
John's East. Mr. Speaker, the Minister may be new to this portfolio, but he's not new to politics. This is about our military being involved in a war. The Minister told the media repeatedly that Canada was the only allied country other than the U.S. with precision-guided weapons for use in Syria. The Chief of Defence Staff then had to make a public statement to correct the Minister. Will he now apologize for his hyperbole and start telling Canadians the true facts about our involvement in the Iraq War?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, the member for St. John is incorrect. The statement of the Chief of Defence Staff confirmed what I said, which was based on the advice I received from the military, indicating that currently only the United States is using precision-guided munitions of this nature against ISIL targets. The Royal Canadian Air Force, I'm advised by the Chief of Defence Staff and the military, has amongst the best most advanced precision-guided munitions in the world that can hit dynamic targets that only the United States is currently using against the genocidal terrorist organization. It's regrettable, however, that the NDP wants Canada to sit on the sidelines in the fight against this genocidal.
The Honourable Member for St. John's East.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister, as usual, chooses to be over the top over providing the facts to the Canadian people. Mr. Speaker, Canadian pilots will, according to the government, be carrying out bombing runs in Syria, and they will face many challenges, including the 131 active surface-to-air missile sites controlled by the government of Syria. Given that the Assad regime is both murderous and untrustworthy, can the Minister provide assurances to the House and to Canadians that Canadian Forces pilots will not be targeted by the Syrian regime?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Well, Mr. Speaker, obviously there is an inherent risk involved in any military deployment or operation. Having said that, the advice I've received consistently from our military is that the Syrian military does not have radar coverage in that part of Syria. And indeed, we have observed that hundreds, if not thousands, of sorties against ISIL have been flown by the United States and other allies in operations against the genocidal terrorist organization, the so-called Islamic State in eastern Syria. And we're not aware of any efforts to challenge them. Neither ISIL nor the Syrian state has challenged any of those flights. Our assessment is that the risk is no greater flying in Syria, in that part of Syria, than it has been in Iraq today.
The Honourable Member for Westmount Ville-Marie.
Mr. Speaker, the most recent survey among business leaders shows that optimism is at its lowest level since the end of the recession. Almost 40% expect the economy to contract this year, as compared with 3% last year. That's a huge drop in expectations, and all of this under the aegis of this government. We've recorded the worst economic growth over the past 80 years. And what's the minister doing? Delaying the budget, and he's vanished. When can we expect a budget? Will it be during the week of April 20th? Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remind you that the Liberal finance critic is the one who said Liberals believe that Canadians are prepared to pay more and more taxes. We have no lessons to learn from the Liberals, who have slashed transfers to the provinces and who have still not explained what happened to the $40 billion in taxpayers' money. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative government is the only one worthy of confidence for creating jobs.
Honourable member for Wascana.
This government's record on economic growth is the worst in 80 years. All the chartered banks, the Conference Board, the IMF, the OECD, they've all chopped their forecasts yet again. Now the Bank of Canada says economic growth in this country is atrocious and requires, quote, considerable monetary stimulus to avoid falling back into recession. Will the finance minister do what his own department says is the most cost-effective thing to drive immediate growth, and that's invest in more municipal infrastructure right now? Will he do that?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the governor's comments related to the impact of oil, the drop in oil on the oil industry and the economy, yet the Liberals are advocating policies that would deliberately weaken the Canadian oil economy. Under our government, we have the strongest job record in the entire G7, and in respect to infrastructure, we have the largest and longest infrastructure program in the history of Canada, $75 billion over the next 10 years, $53 billion to the provinces and municipalities. We're very proud of what we're doing in this field.
The Honourable member for Wascana.
With a great big $5 billion hole in it right now. They live in a time warp over there, Mr. Speaker. The jobs they brag about were 3 and 4 and 5 years ago, not recently. Last year, new jobs were barely 121,000. That was down 3.5% from the year before, and the year before was down 60% from the year before that. They're steadily creating fewer jobs, not more, and they're going in exactly the opposite direction from the Bank of Canada. Will the minister stop undermining Governor Polo's and reinvest in municipal infrastructure right now?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
It seems that the member opposite doesn't listen very well. We talked about the largest and longest infrastructure program in the history of Canada, much more than the Liberals even thought about. This is a party that believes that increasing taxes, increasing expenditures is the road to growth. In fact, it's the road to economic decline. We do not take any lessons from the Liberals, who created a $40 billion slush fund and now want to introduce a carbon tax, a tax on everything, which will kill jobs and undermine our economy.
The Honourable Member for Alfred-Bellan. The Conservatives' Bill C-51 shows their obsession with espionage, especially when we talk about activists who don't share their ideology. In fact, groups of veterans, First Nations groups who've met, and doctors who met as a day of action on refugees are already under surveillance by this government as a threat to national security. C-51 will make the Conservatives' job even easier. Why is the minister so bent on spying on these legal activities undertaken by Canadians? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I have confidence in the committee that will bring reasonable amendments to the bill to improve it, to ensure that Canadians are protected. Mr. Speaker, allow me to quote the former judge from the Supreme Court, John Major, who said that had it not been through adequate sharing of information, the Air India tragedy could have been prevented if there had been a better exchange of information. Now, Mr. Speaker, all protests are excluded when it comes to the sharing of information. The Honourable Member for Alfred-Bellan. Many witnesses at the committee talked about scrapping the bill, proposing amendment, and getting back to the drawing board. So I hope that the Conservatives are going to do the right thing and to support the NDP's amendments on this. intelligence agencies are stepping up the number of reports they produce. Between May and February of 2014 and February 2015, the government received 160 reports on illegal activities. Now, none of these activities, or almost none, represent a risk for national security, and Bill C-51 won't help. Why is the minister wasting taxpayers' money on monitoring activities of groups that represent no danger to national security? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Operations Centre, the Government Operations Centre, plays a crucial role because it monitors events that may have disastrous consequences, such as earthquakes, fires, etc. It was set up in 2004, and it coordinates all operations for the government. Now, clearly, Bill C-51 does not cover those activities, but I'd like to invite my colleague to avoid using those kinds of excuses for not putting in place effective means for protecting Canadians.
Conservatives may want to appear like they've been listening when it comes to C-51, but the 3 weak amendments they've had to bring forward to their own bill don't even come close to dealing with its fundamental flaws. C-51 is still dangerously vague and overreaching, and it still ignores proven measures that work to combat terrorism. When Canadians hear that security services are monitoring protesting veterans and disability advocates, they're right to wonder whether it makes any sense to give these agencies wider powers with no new oversight. Why does the minister continue to insist that more oversight isn't needed when it clearly is?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
It's amazing to see, Mr. Speaker, the NDP using excuses not to support a bill that has common sense measures to protect Canadians against the terrorist threat we're facing, a terrorist threat we've seen here in Ottawa, we've seen in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, in Copenhagen, in Paris, in Sydney, Mr. Speaker. This is a serious matter, Mr. Speaker. I count on the committee to come up with good proposal and amendment that will strengthen the bill, strengthen our protection, our rights, Mr. Speaker, that will more importantly keep us safe from the terrorist threat we are facing now.
We're waiting for official reports on both those incidents in October. But it's not just C-51 where the Conservatives are falling short on protecting public safety. Global news investigators have raised questions about whether RCMP officers lack the tools and training needed to respond to the attack on RCMP members in New Brunswick, which cost 3 lives. The RCMP has been forced to reallocate resources and to move 600 officers from organized and financial crimes to respond to national security threats, a situation the RCMP Commissioner called unsustainable. Now the Conservatives are asking the RCMP to do even more while they cut their budget for a 3rd year in a row. Does the minister think this situation is acceptable?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, while we've increased the budget of our CMP by 1/3, we did not get the support of the opposition, Mr. Speaker. But let me tell you that keeping our streets and communities safe is our priority, Mr. Speaker. While training and procurement are matters that fall under the direct review of the RCMP, our government supports Canada's law enforcement agencies with the legislative tools, such as C-51, which the NDP are not willing to give to our RCMP officer, and resources, Mr. Speaker. We will stand for the RCMP. Where is the NDP when talking of public safety and security, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Member for Bourg-en-Bresse. Here's another file bearing the brunt of Conservative incompetency. We've learned that Future Shop is closing 131 stores across the country. 1,500 people have been laid off. They're in addition to the thousands of people who've already lost their jobs on the Conservative watch. Many workers learned that they would have to find a new job when they got to work Saturday morning and when they found the store's doors locked. How can the Conservatives explain their lack of action to the families of the employees of Future Shop? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, clearly we will be supporting all employees affected by the decision by helping them to connect with available jobs. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, our economy has created more than 1.2 million net new jobs. 85% are full-time jobs, 2/3 are in well-paying industries, and it's thanks to the tax cuts that have helped build our economy. The NDP and the Liberals want to increase taxes. That will kill jobs and hurt Canadian families. We will not allow them to do that. The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Nijit-Témiscouata-Lebec. It's not just the job losses at Future Shop that are of concern. The President of the Bank of Canada painted a very somber picture of our economy. Economic results for the first quarter of 2015 are, and I quote, atrocious. Stephen Polas is calling for the Conservatives to take action, but we're still waiting for the budget. And at the same time, a large Canadian bank is suspected of facilitating tax evasion in France. What are the Conservatives waiting for to kickstart the economy and fighting tax evasion? The Honourable Minister. Stay tuned for the budget.
That we will balance the budget, and we will introduce a budget which will benefit Canadians from coast to coast to coast. We have already introduced a plan which will benefit 4 million Canadian families right across this country. We've introduced a tax rebate which will benefit 90% of businesses, 780,000 businesses. Ours is a low-tax plan for jobs and growth, in contrast to the opposition, which would do the opposite. We will assure long-term prosperity for Canadians, and the budget will be part of that plan.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Nijit-Témiscouata-Lebec. Atrocious. Those are the words, that's the word, in fact, used to buy the governor. That's the economic record, and Canada's economy is worsening. The President of the Bank of Canada cautioned the Conservatives unequivocally. The decline in oil prices may cascade quickly through the economy and into the labour market. The Minister of Finance is still missing on this. When will the Minister leave his ivory tower and introduce a budget for the middle class? The Honourable Minister of Finance. As I've said on several occasions, a budget will not come before April, and now I'll say stay tuned, because it's coming soon. Mr. Speaker, what we're going to be doing is balance the budget and advance policies that will be beneficial for Canadians across the country.
Member for Parkdale High Park.
Well, let's try again, Mr. Speaker. Future Shops announced the permanent closure of 66 stores with another 1,500 jobs lost, adding to the tens of thousands of lost retail jobs under the Conservatives' watch. Right. And now, after record lows in job growth, the Governor of the Bank of Canada is describing our country's economic performance as atrocious.
Oh, man, atrocious.
Yet the Finance Minister continues to delay the budget. When will they listen to the Bank of Canada and take urgent action to create jobs and help the economy? When will they table the budget?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, ironically, the Governor of the Bank of Canada was commenting on the effects of low oil prices on the Canadian economy, which points to the fact that our natural resource sector is extremely important. The NDP's leader calls that sector a disease, and they, along with their Liberal friends, want to bring in a carbon tax that would decimate both that sector and many others right across the economy. Mr. Speaker, the last thing our economy and its workers need right now is gigantic new debt and taxes that the NDP and Liberals propose on them, Mr. Speaker. Instead, we're going to keep taxes low and creating jobs for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Parkdale High Park.
The Bank of Canada says the situation is atrocious, and Canadian families are paying the price. A new report says in Toronto alone, 12,000 public housing units will be uninhabitable within 8 years unless the government helps. The mayor said inaction has left cities like ours twisting in the wind. When will the Conservatives stop hiding and start doing their job? When will they finally introduce a budget and make the economy work for Canadian families?
Honourable Minister of State for Social Development.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to Canadian families, we've given them tax cuts and direct benefits. And Mr. Speaker, when it comes to housing, we have signed affordable housing agreements with every province across this country. We've made strong investments so that provinces can allocate the funding where they believe that housing is needed and in the way that it's needed. We've also invested in our homelessness partnering strategy. So whether it's cutting taxes for families, helping businesses, or helping provinces with housing needs, we're getting it done, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Laurent-Cartierville. Mr. Speaker, Commissioner Paulson said that 300 RCMP officers assigned to criminal investigations had to be transferred to fighting terrorism. If the RCMP is forced to choose among its vital responsibilities, it's because of the $195 million in cuts imposed by the Conservative government. Why is the minister denying the existence of this cut of $195.4 million when it's written black on white in Budget 2012, Table 1A.19, entitled Estimated Savings Public Safety Portfolio? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the Honourable Member, a colleague opposite, for having referred to a specific table. I'd like to give him the overall picture, if you will, of the situation. Since we took power, the Conservative government has increased the budget for police services for the RCMP by more than 33%. Mr. Speaker, the colleague, unfortunately, and his party, the Liberal Party, didn't support those increases. But I can tell you that we will continue to work to ensure that our police services have the resources they need to protect Canadians and to fulfill their mandate.
The member for Mount Peck.
Mr. Speaker, a cut, the minister should know this, Mr. Speaker, a cut is not an increase. Cuts of $195 million and more since 2012 to the RCMP is not keeping Canadians safe. Right. Having to transfer hundreds of officers from criminal investigations to anti-terrorism is not keeping streets safe in this country. Right. In fact, the rank-and-file RCMP officers came out this weekend, put their jobs on the line to tell the Canadian public they feel betrayed by this government because they're not getting the funds for training. Why is this minister compromising public safety?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable colleague and gives me an opportunity to remind those who are listening to us that this Conservative government has increased by 1/3 the financial resources for the RCMP. Why, Mr. Speaker? Because we believe it is important to make sure that they have the efficient resources, but not only the resources, but also the tools, especially when we are facing a terrorist threat, Mr. Speaker. And that's why here and abroad, this government is standing up for Canadians and protecting them. Thank you.
The honourable member for Mount Peck.
Mr. Speaker, enough from this minister of the deception. The global news program on the weekend cuts through the deception.
We've had similar instances where members don't use proper terms. There are proper cabinet ministerial titles. I'll ask members to keep to those as it leads to a lot less disorder. The honourable member for Mount Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. My point is this government is good at deception but not good at talking about the facts. This weekend, media reports show that the rank-and-file RCMP members are coming out, they're speaking out, they're feeling betrayed, they are not provided the resources for training or the resources for equipment they need to do their job. Simply put, why will this minister, why is he compromising public safety, and why is he...
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Well, Mr. Speaker, again, let me tell this member and those who are listening to us that keeping our street and community safe is our priority, Mr. Speaker. And I'm proud to stand with a government, Mr. Speaker, who has done so much, not only to keep our streets safe, Mr. Speaker, but also to take care of victims, Mr. Speaker. We've done that by increasing our investment in our Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Mr. Speaker. We've entered in crime prevention, Mr. Speaker, and we also want to protect Canadians against the terrorist threat, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me tell you that this government is committed to ensure that the RCMP has the sufficient resource to keep Canadians safe. Thank you.
Member for Brossard-La Prairie.
Early Sunday morning, Air Canada Flight 624 crash-landed at Halifax International Airport. 25 passengers were injured, but luckily all are now safe and sound. Earlier reports indicate the plane touched down more than 300 meters short of the runway and smashed through antennas. Since 2010, the Transportation Safety Board has been sounding the alarm about runway overruns and the lack of tougher safety regulations. Can the minister tell us why the government has been dragging its feet?
Honourable Minister of Transport.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Speaker, we want to thank the flight crew. We want to thank the first responders who responded so effectively to this incident in Halifax, which ensured that the passengers did indeed make it to safely in a timely manner. I would also say, Mr. Speaker, that I spoke with the chair of the Transportation Safety Board today. She indicated that they are taking the investigation very seriously. They are there on the ground in Halifax. Any updates and reports will, of course, come from them, as they are the ones in charge and the proper authority in this case and in this matter, and I look forward to getting the results from this investigation.
Honourable Member for Brassard-La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, this disastrous landing could have been a terrible tragedy. Fortunately, all 133 passengers and crew members from Air Canada Flight 624 are safe and sound. The plane touched down about 300 meters before the runway and hit an antenna array. The accident raises many questions, especially since the Transportation Safety Board has been asking Transport Canada since 2010 to adopt tougher safety regulations to prevent landing accidents. Will the minister finally follow those recommendations from the TSB? Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, again, we are grateful that everybody involved in this incident, of course, are safe and sound. I also want to express my thanks once again to the first responders and to the flight attendants who ensured that the passengers were evacuated to safely. Finally, Mr. Speaker, this is truly within the domain of the Transportation Safety Board right now. They are undertaking the investigation and analyzing any factors that came into play. I look forward to their results.
Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Mr. Speaker, grain producers will still have to bear the cost of Conservative mismanagement. We learned this weekend that the government will not renew the minimum transport requirement quotas for grain. These minimum requirements are important for producers, many of whom still can't empty their bins. How can the government justify that they're siding with the rail companies instead of protecting our farmers?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Actually, Mr. Speaker, with respect, the member is completely incorrect. Our government's action has actually worked in this case, and the amount of grain has moved significantly off the prairies. And again, grain is running at a rate that contributes to the strong economic growth that, of course, we had intended from the beginning. It has been a successful intervention. I'm grateful for the support from the Minister of Agriculture, who has done an excellent job with this file. And I'm grateful as well to the farmers in Canada and the rail companies as well, too, to ensure that we move this valuable commodity at the pace that we did in that crisis.
The member for Welland.
Mr. Speaker, I suggest the minister should try telling that to producer cars, shippers who are actually waiting for producer cars for the last couple of months. But, Mr. Speaker, the government's treatment of grain farmers has been nothing less than shameful. First, they waffled on the penalties, lowering the fines and giving the railways a pass for violating rules, and now they're going to not extend the minimum requirements. There are farmers who still have grain backlogs. There are producers who are still awaiting producer cars on the prairies, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, it's a simple question. Why is the government so unwilling to stand up to the railways and defend Canadian farmers?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, the OIC worked to get grain moving and reclaim Canada's export reputation as a reliable shipper. Western Canadian shipments from ports are 31% higher than last year and 25% higher than the 5-year average. CP and CN moved almost 50 million tons of grain under the OIC, 2.5 million tons over the mandated requirements. So carryout is projected to be within the normal average of 10 million tons.
Can't argue with facts.
The Honourable Member for Chatham, Kent, Essex.
Mr. Speaker, today the Prime Minister is at the Honda Canada plant in Alliston, Ontario, where he announced for the first time Honda will be using one of its Canadian facilities to produce vehicles for export to Europe. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Trade share with the House why this announcement is so important for Ontario's automotive and advanced manufacturing sector, and indeed for all Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the Honourable Member from Chatham, Kent, Essex. Mr. Speaker, today's announcement by Honda was made possible by the historic market access provided by the Canada-EU trade agreement, which is paving way for increased Canadian exports to the world's largest integrated market. This government's top priority is creating jobs and economic growth which is why we have worked so hard to open new markets for Canadian companies and why we continue to support our exporters and manufacturers as part of the most ambitious pro-export, pro-jobs plan in Canadian history. Thank you.
Honourable member for Argenteuil-Papineau Mirabel.
Minister for Aboriginal Affairs deeply offended First Nations leaders when he tried to cite an unsourced fact contradicted by the RCMP. Instead of attacking Indigenous people, the minister should bring people together to end the violence and finally call a national public inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women. Will the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs stand up and apologize for his hurtful and thoughtless comments?
Honourable Minister of Aboriginal Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, as I did say last week, the week before I did a tour of the prairies and met with several First Nations and stakeholders to discuss a wide range of issues. And while I don't disclose specifics of closed-door meetings, I can assure all members that we had a productive discussion, and that from what I got from many people outside of those meetings, I'm talking about chiefs and tribal council, is that they will indeed use the action plan to address the issues of missing and Aboriginal women.
Honourable member for Argenteuil-Papineau Mirabel. The minister is backing himself into a corner by continuing to blame everyone and everything except his own inaction. Calls for him to step down are starting to get louder. Yesterday on Tout le monde en parle, we heard a moving plea from Laurie Ojik, the mother of Maisie, who disappeared over 6 years ago from the First Nations community of Kitigan-Zibi. Will the minister listen to her appeal for justice and for a national public inquiry?
That member knows full well that we don't need a national inquiry. What we have is an action plan that the minister tabled in September of last year. We will continue to work with communities to develop safety plans to raise awareness and take measures to empower Aboriginal women and girls. We're developing more community safety plans on and off reserves, including regions identified specifically by the RCMP. This action plan will engage men and boys, it'll raise awareness to break intergenerational cycles of violence, and, Mr. Speaker, it will address underlying causes of violence through structured training initiatives. We on this side of the House stand up for Aboriginal women and girls.
Tomorrow is the deadline for announcing greenhouse gas reduction targets before the Paris Conference on Climate Change. Mexico has already submitted its action plan. The United States, meanwhile, will officially unveil their commitments tomorrow. But, as usual, the Conservatives, well, they've announced that they don't have a plan. Why is this government once again playing catch-up? Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our government is playing a constructive role in establishing new international climate change agreements that includes meaningful and transparent commitment from all major emitters. In line with the Lima Agreement, Canada is preparing its intended nationally determined contributions and is committed to submitting it well in advance of the COP21 December 2015 meetings. Because this is an international contribution, we are seeking information from the provinces and territories to understand how they intend to meet their targets and how their plans will factor into Canada's overall commitment. In the lead-up to Paris, we continue to take actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Halifax.
The only thing the Conservatives are on target to meet is complete failure.
Months
ago, this government agreed to a March 31st deadline for announcing national climate targets, but just like with the oil and gas regulations, this has become the latest in a long string of broken promises. Mexico has announced its plan. The U.S. is moving forward. When will we stop being international laggards on climate change? When will they release Canada's plan for reducing greenhouse gases?
Hear, hear. Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, we welcome the announcement recently by the United States and Mexico on climate change, and we're very pleased to see that Mexico and the United States are undertaking efforts that emulate much of the work that Canada has done in partnership with the United States. Canada and the United States are successfully aligning regulations in several areas, including the vehicles and the HFCs. And at home, our government is reducing emissions while growing the economy, and we're doing this without the job-killing carbon tax the NDP and the Liberals will introduce. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for St. Maurice Champlain. Mr. Speaker, at the end of this year, Canada will participate in the 21st UN Climate Change Conference. According to data compiled by researchers in Canada, our country will be unable to respect its commitments and its deadline to submit its targets for greenhouse gas emissions. In this context, does the Prime Minister plan to commit the country to a new strategy to decrease or increase polluting emissions? Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I have stated, Canada is playing an constructive role in establishing new international climate change targets for Canada. In line with the Lima Agreement, Canada is preparing its intended nationally determined contribution and is committed to submitting this well in advance of COP21. And this is the work that we're continuing to do with the provinces and territories and seeking the information to understand how they intend to participate in meeting those targets and how that plan will factor in Canada's overall commitment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Full member for Scarborough-Guildwood.
Mr. Speaker, the deadline for submitting Canada's next climate action program to the UN is tomorrow. The Conservative government will not meet that deadline. The Petersburg Climate Dialogue will take place in May. The Conservative government will not attend. Chancellor Merkel plans to make climate change the #1 priority at the G7 meetings in June. The Prime Minister will try to obstruct those meetings. If deadlines are missed, meetings are skipped, and the G7 sabotaged, then why bother with a charade of COP21 in Paris?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I've stated, we are in line with moving forward in establishing the targets for Canada. COP21 meetings does not take place until December 2015. Because because we have to work with the provinces and territories, we are seeking information from the provinces and the territories in terms of their plan and how that will contribute to Canada meeting developing its target. Our government is playing a constructive role in establishing new international climate change agreements that include meaningful and transparent commitments from
The Honourable Member for Louis-Hébert. Mr. Speaker, clearly there's been no progress on the Quebec Bridge file. The most recent study by consulting firm Rush has doubled the estimated cost of repainting the bridge. However, CN has refused to make the entire report public. When it comes to transparency, well, we've seen better. But while the Conservatives are busy making promises in Quebec City, in Montreal, the federal government is preparing to repaint the Jacques Cartier Bridge. Will the minister stand with the people of Quebec City and force CN to make the entire report public? Honourable Minister of Infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, on this file we are working in cooperation with the Mayor of Quebec City, Mr. Labaume, the Mayor of Lévis, the Government of Quebec, and when it comes to this bridge, we're also working with the owner, CN. We have respected our commitments. There's one thing that member has done for the bridge. He's organized a photo contest. While he was doing that, we committed a huge amount of money to the repainting of that bridge. The Honourable Member for Quebec. That's ridiculous, Mr. Speaker. We know very well that this minister is doing nothing at all for Quebec City. In Quebec City, we're still waiting for the bridge. We're still waiting for the bridge to be repainted. We've been waiting 7 years now for the Quebec City Armory to be rebuilt, and still nothing there. And we're still waiting to know if the government will fund the Tall Ships 2017 event in Quebec City. So will the minister finally take the interests of the people of Quebec City to heart and do his job? Honourable Minister for Infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, it's with great pleasure that I have been working in the Quebec City region, because since the last election, those members haven't been doing much of anything. We're working for all people of Quebec, all the regions of Quebec and Canada. We will continue to do our job, Mr. Speaker, and it's very important for us to respect jurisdiction. We're working with our municipal provincial partners in Ottawa, Mr. Speaker. We're doing our job.
The honourable member for Desnathay, Mississippi, Churchill River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Some Canadians choose to have family members care for their young children. This important group deserves support. But the NDP child care plan would do absolutely nothing for them. It would not provide these families with a single dime that they can use to care for their children. And that's shameful, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister of State of Social Development please update this House on how our Conservative government plan will help every Canadian family?
The Honourable Minister of State for Social Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, that member is right. What Canadian families are looking for are options and choice when it comes to child care. Mr. Speaker, some families use other family members to help care for their children. Some use regulated daycare spaces. Some use private daycare. And some families make that sacrifice and one parent will stay home. Our plan supports every single family with children because we trust them with their decision making. The opposition, Mr. Speaker, the NDP would only help 10%. The Liberals have no plan for families. We'll trust families. We'll continue to put money in the pockets of Canadian families so they can make choices best for them.
Honourable member for Vancouver Centre.
Mr. Speaker, 1 year after the expiry of the 2004 Health Accord, doctors for Medicare and other health advocates are on the Hill with thousands of petitions from Canadians concerned for the future of Medicare. In 2004, as Leader of the Opposition, this Prime Minister supported the Accord and vowed, I quote, "We must ensure governments live up to their commitments made in the Health Accord." Yet, his government abandoned the agreement, refuses to meet premiers, and changed health transfers to per capita, jeopardizing provinces' ability to provide basic services. Why did he break his promise and put the future of Medicare at risk?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is entirely untrue because, Mr. Speaker, under the late Jim Flaherty, it was announced that we would, of course, continue funding health care for the next 10 years. And we are now at the highest recorded health transfers in Canadian history. Since forming government, health transfers have increased by almost 70%, and record funding is going to reach $40 billion annually. And most importantly, Mr. Speaker, every single year we will see an increase in health spending.
The Honourable Member for St. John's South Pearl.
A fisheries delegation from Newfoundland and Labrador is in Ottawa today to talk about the Conservatives' mismanagement of northern shrimp. Unfortunately, the Fisheries Committee is not slated to meet with them, and there's no sign of the Conservatives correcting their course. Coastal communities should be able to benefit from the resources off their shores, but the Conservatives have not committed to upholding the principle of adjacency when it comes to northern shrimp. Mr. Speaker, why does the minister continue to ignore Newfoundlanders and Labradorians who depend on healthy, local fisheries?
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to fish harvesting decision, we always look for the right balance between maximizing economic opportunities for fishermen and ensuring sustainable fisheries. As announced by the Minister of Fisheries today, this year's science supports a rollover of total allowable catch in most shrimp fishing areas with a modest increase in Area 5. This means that all fishermen currently involved in the northern shrimp fishery will be out fishing this upcoming season.
The Honourable Member for Brandon Souris.
Speaker, farmers know that one of the most useful short-term loan programs that they have is the advance payment program. The program provides all farmers, whether they're grain or oilseed, livestock or horticulture businesses, Mr. Speaker, the ability to borrow $400,000 from the federal government and up to $100,000 of that being interest-free on an annual basis. These dollars are used to cover the production costs before crops get an opportunity to go to market. And so I'd like to ask the Parliamentary Secretary for Agriculture to please inform the House and farmers what the government is doing to improve this program.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Agriculture.
Mr. Speaker, today the Minister of Agriculture announced that as of April 1st, our government is improving the advance payments program. Farmers can now get multi-year loan arrangements, use new security to guarantee the loan, and repay it with cash on hand. It is easier for farmers in a cooperative or who have incorporated to access the program. We have removed the monopolies of the program administrators, and now they have to compete for farmers' business with lower rates and advances suited to the needs of the farmer. This is another example of our government creating the conditions for economic growth and prosperity in Canada.
Member from Edmonton, St. Albert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tonight, this House will vote on extending our commitment to degrade ISIL until March 30th, 2016. Now, I want to support this motion, but I'm having a difficult time seeing positive outcomes for the well-intentioned goal of degrading ISIL. In fact, the U.S. is worried that Shia militias will retaliate against Sunni civilians if occupied territories are recovered from ISIS. CIA operatives believe that the real threat in the region is not ISIS, it's the Shia militia that wants to replace ISIS. Now, assuming that ISIL can be degraded, does the government believe that that will lead to more or less stability in the region?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Degrading the genocidal, fanatical terrorist organization of the so-called Islamic State will be helpful to regional security, which is why every single country in the region is involved in the military operation against ISIS, as why 60 countries are supporting the overall Allied coalition, while 24 of them, including, and by the way, while all 28 NATO countries are supporting the operation in one shape or form against ISIL. Yes, they are, according to the Secretary General of NATO.
Member for Edmonton, St. Albert.
Mr. Speaker, last October 22nd, moments before he murdered an unarmed sentry guard and then stormed into this very centre block, an armed terrorist recorded a video confirming that his actions were in retaliation for Canada's involvement in Afghanistan and our then recent decision to deploy the RCIF to Iraq. Now, given the increasingly complex quagmire in Iraq and Syria, and therefore the dubious nature of long-term positive outcomes, is the government not concerned that by extending our modest commitment for another 12 months, an unfortunate consequence could very well be more retaliatory attacks on Canadian soil?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Speaker, the Honourable Member alluded to this at the beginning. These jihadists have declared war on Canada. They have urged their supporters to, quote, attack disbelieving Canadians in any manner and have vowed that we should not even feel secure even in our own homes. If the Honourable Member is looking for a reason to support this motion, I would suggest to him because it's the right thing to do. He should support it.
The Honourable Member for Avalon.
Mr. Speaker, in 2013, the Conservative government dismantled the Office of Commission of Review Tribunal and replaced it with the Social Security Tribunal. A number of files were transferred from the OCRT to the SST. My office has some files going back to 2012, which still have not been resolved. Many gravely ill Canadians have been denied speedy hearings and still waiting to have their appeals heard. This is unacceptable. The Minister promised to wipe out the backlog by this summer. Can he provide an update on his spike unit and what is the impact it's having on eliminating the backlog?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
For his question, we consider the backlog to be completely unacceptable. That is precisely why my predecessor came up with a common sense plan to triage the backlog within the department. That is to say, to treat the cases that have been around for a long time by settling them before they even have to go before the tribunal. I can report to the House that my officials advise that we are on track to eliminate the backlog and that our officials within the department are making great progress towards that goal.
Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Minister for Public Safety earlier in this question period completely mischaracterized the evidence of former Justice John Major, who headed the Air India inquiry. Justice John Major made it abundantly clear to the Public Safety Committee that he does not find the information sharing provisions in Bill C-51 adequate at all. If he said it once, he said it a dozen times. You need oversight at the back end. You need to have a national security advisor. The Justice John Major said that it was human nature to withhold information between agencies. The bill needs fixing. Will the minister fix it?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, as I've indicated, our government is open to reasonable amendments to improve the C-51 bill and to ensure that it protects Canadians while protecting their rights and freedoms. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to oversight, Canada can be proud of its oversight model. There are a number of provisions in the bill that will reinforce the oversight and mechanisms, and I invite my colleague to read Article 4 of the bill, which gives extended power to the Oversight Committee.
Concludes question period for today. I am honored to recognize His Excellency Kevin Vickers, Canada's Ambassador to Ireland and former Sergeant-at-Arms, who is joining us today in the Speaker's Gallery. For nearly a decade, Mr. Vickers' presence resonated throughout the parliamentary precinct. He joined us in 2005 as Director of Security Services after a distinguished career with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. A year later, he was appointed the 9th Sergeant-at-Arms of the House of Commons. As Sergeant-at-Arms, he expanded on his security leadership role, taking on new challenges, including leading the long-term vision and plan for the House of Commons, strengthening partnerships with key organizations, and improving service delivery to members. Veuillez vous joindre.
Please join with us in expressing our recognition and wishing him every success in the next interesting step in his distinguished career.
Tabling of documents, dépôt de documents. The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 36.8, I have the honour to table in both official languages the government's responses to 51 petitions.
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to subsection 6.41 of the Aeronautics Act and for referral to the Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities, I am pleased to table in both official languages this interim order respecting flight deck occupants, which I announced last Thursday, March 26, 2015, as a precautionary measure to ensure the security of Canadian passengers following the Germanwings tragedy. My officials continue to review all policies and procedures, and any further actions will be communicated to this House as appropriate.
Introduction of government bills. Mr. O'Toole, seconded by Mr. McKay, Central Nova, moves for leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Canadian Forces Members and Veterans Re-establishment and Compensation Act and to make consequential amendments to another act. This